Hi everyone, thank you for coming. Let's introduce myself. I'm Louis. I'm the ecosystem lead at Starkware, and today I'm going to explain, what can be built now that we are getting scale on Ethereum. Okay, so the rise of L2 native dApp. I'm going to start very briefly with sort of an overview of scaling and what blockchain are and why do we need scaling and the way we do it. Just bear with me if you already know that stuff. Okay, so there is kind of a paradox when it comes to blockchain, which is blockchain are relatively recent system, but they are slower than 40 years old system like credit cards. And so the question here is why? Why are we willing to spend our energy on systems that are so slow? And the reason is because when you look at traditional finance, you are not working the same sort of framework of trust that you are when you're working on blockchain. So when you work with traditional finance, you're going to work in a delegated accountability model, meaning you're going to trust a centralized entity or a set of centralized entity to do things properly. On the other hand, blockchain is inclusive accountability, meaning don't trust, verify, where every member of the network, anyone can join, and any member of the network can, verify that everything that happened is correct. The problem when you do this naively, which what I've been done so far when it comes to crypto, is that you sacrifice both scale and privacy. Why? Because even though the miner, the sequencer, the guy who's going to update the database, who's going to mine the block, is super rich and can have his data center, is limited in his ability to process data by the smallest node in the network, the target machine that the network have. So for instance, on Bitcoin, it's a Raspberry Pi. On Ethereum, it's a $2,500 machine, a big laptop. And on Solana, it's roughly anywhere between $500 to $2,000 machine on AWS per month. And so this is where we start from. And the question we're bringing in now is, how can we scale inclusive accountability? And so the current state of affairs, as I said, you have centralized entities, you have blockchain where it's slow, and the centralized entity can go big because they have big computers, basically. Fast, exclusive versus slow, inclusive. And one way that have been, done in the past is increasing the block size or increasing the gas limit. So the problem when you do that is you are kicking people out of the network. You are kicking the guy, the 14 years old in the middle of India, for whatever. And so that's not the way, as Ethereum, as a community, we want to scale. So we want to scale Ethereum. And so this is where the Starkware comes in. This is where validity proof comes in and where Snark and Starks comes in. So what are those systems? What Starkware brings to the table is a solution called ZKP, also known as Stark proofs. And so let me just explain how does it work and what it brings in terms of scaling. So what we define as a proof is the following. A proof is a system where a prover will basically run my operation, and me as a verifier will receive a proof that I'm going to verify. The cool thing about those proofs is that the verifier, the prover is going to spend a bit more time to generate that proof, like a bit more time than we do naively running a node on the network. But the verifier and the million of verifiers after him have an exponential speed up. So what would take you a week to verify, to prove, will take you a millisecond to verify. This is like the magic that offers EKPs. And so when it comes to blockchain, we have this system. What we can do is that instead of propagating all the transactions, we can verify that the transactions are valid and just send the end result and the proof to the verifiers. This is what ZK rollups are. And so now let's have a look of what it costs in terms of decent space of application on Ethereum. And so the main issue you have as a dApp developer today is not making your app too expensive. Otherwise, no one is going to use it. And so this has two implications. It has an implication in the way your app will operate, and also it's one you can actually build. And so just to explore a tiny bit of an example of what happened on L1 is, for anyone who's been around for a long time, probably used back in the days Ether Delta, Fork Delta, which was basically a full order book exchange on the blockchain. But it came out of usage because it became so expensive to use. And so it was replaced by technically less capital efficient solution like IMM, like Uniswap V2, which were optimized for the constraint of the blockchain. And so The main issue when you have a V2, when you are as a, so on most liquid pools, meaning if DAI, for instance, is that you require a lot more liquidity to be as capital efficient, to provide sort of the same market making that you would do on a centralized exchange. A market maker that's going to trade on Binance is going to need probably 100 times less funds than Uniswap to do the same operation in the same sort of slippage. And so now the question is, can you do better? Can we do better? Another sort of thing that cannot be done today is managing liquidation, managing stop loss, limit order, all the sort of things that you would like for a proper, efficient financial market. And so, as I said, so far, we have seen application being restricted by what they can do. And now the question we have with R2 is that what would happen if we are unlocking this computation power? And this is what we're starting to see when it comes to StarkNet. So StarkNet is a ZK rollup. So ZK rollup is what I explained before. It's an L2. It's like a solution that's run on top of Ethereum to scale Ethereum using validity proof. And what it provides from the developer perspective is two main difference in programming pattern. The first one is computation is extremely cheap. Why extremely cheap? Is because today you are paying not only for the computation you run once, but for the million of people coming after you, going to re-verify it over time, resyncing the network over time. And on the other hand, you also have free witness data, meaning if you're familiar with the way blockchain transaction work on Ethereum, you have this notion of cold data. Cold data is also called history in the context of Ethereum. In the context of a rollup, the history is actually no longer necessary for the security of the system. Why? Because everything is valid. I could not have lied. I don't need to be convinced that this cold data, this transaction was processed properly because I know it was based on the cryptography and the math. Okay, so now, if you want to take advantage of this, today what you need to do is use Cairo, which is our programming language and VM and user infrastructure. More will come, it's not limited to us. But what I want to show now is what we have seen so far emerging in terms of use case and what we have seen, existing so far. Showing up. And so let's look at that. Okay, so the first study case, the one we have the most experience with, is DYDX. So DYDX, for who don't know, is a DEX, a decentralized perpetual contract, perpetual project, meaning that you can run and buy and sell perps like you would do on Binance and FTX, but you do that in a decentralized fashion and with self-custody. And so DYDX was running on L1 before. And when they were running on L1, a settlement, meaning a match between two orders, would cost anywhere between 200,000 to 300,000 gas. And another thing that happened is that because of the way Oracle price were working back then, they couldn't offer too much leverage. They need to cap the amount of leverage they could offer. For those who are familiar with that, on Binance up to recently, I think they removed it, but you could go up to 100x exposure. And on DYDX back then, you could do only 10x. And so working with us, because of the way cold data is free, this cold data being free, now they can have basically Oracle price at every transaction. A much more granular control over the price and the structure, the infrastructure of the system. And so, which is why they were able to move from 10x to 25x when they moved to us. Another thing is, they were able to not only copy what they did on L1, but they were able to expand. And before that, you would only have one account for one pair. You would basically have a set of USDC, and you would trade for Bitcoin. But now you can not only trade with Bitcoin, you can trade with Bitcoin, ETH, Shiba, whatever is available on the platform. And what we have seen so far is that it exploded the capital efficiency of the system, bringing a lot more volumes. And finally, we are seeing right now transactions which are, if the system would have run on Ethereum, it would have costed something like 600,000 gas. We are transactions now which are 400 gas. We are talking roughly 1,000 times cheaper, 1,000 times 500, something like this. This is what L2 brings. This is what ZK Rollup brings to the table. Okay, so now in terms of on-chain gaming, we have seen on StarkNet right now an explosion of projects coming up, showing use case for gaming. And why so? Because when you look at all on-chain gaming today, the only thing they do, because they can do more, is storing the asset on-chain and enabling trading. That's what Axie has been doing, that's what Sorare has been doing. But the game logic is always done on L2, on off-chain, in a trusted fashion. With cheap computation, we're starting to see the implementation of game logic in contract, people actually working towards game channel, all the sort of infrastructure tooling that you need to create a real unstoppable game, which would achieve the original vision of, Vitalik got into crypto. Why? Because he got ripped of his super fancy card. And because all of a sudden the rule of the game changed. And so we can create games that are unstoppable, where the community can decide, no, I'm not accepting the new rules. And so what I'm saying, we're starting to see that we actually are projects that come not only, just start working with us, projects that are migrating from L1, migrating from other L2s to work with us. So we have Influence here, Influence Eve, if you want to look at it, Dope War, Loot, to name a few, Bricks, someone creating a Caro chess game to enable chess.com in decentralized fashion, a bunch of other things that are popping up, and I'm expecting to see more and more of those coming every day. And this is just an idea. Look at this video. What you're saying. You probably don't understand what you're saying right now, but this is probably the first provable simulation in the world. Meaning, those interactions, this physics engine, is provable in a succinct fashion. So, Guilty Gyoza, who is, you can look on Twitter, is a Cairo dev, he's working on a new company called Topology. He has tried to build multiple things. First one, managing graphics on chain. Another thing he has tried to do is creating a physics engine to run realistic simulation between, provable realistic simulation between participants. And the last thing that are not available here, he actually implemented a machine learning model on the blockchain itself to do inference of, interaction. So why he does that, and I'm not sure his pitch is this way, but the way I always present it is because he wants to live in Ready Player One. So the way it presents is that you don't want to, in Ready Player One, you don't want to live in centralized servers because, you don't want to belong to Google. But therefore you need a set of decentralized servers. Therefore you need a blockchain. But the problem is that blockchain are computationally inefficient environment. So he's leveraging the power of the KPs to enable this vision to achieve. And what do you need now? When you say that, you need a physics engine to enable realistic interaction between humans, in simulation, and you need an AI, it's a big word, for NPCs. So this is what we're starting to see, and we're starting to see more and more of people coming up and showing very interesting new things. Okay, now what is this? This is a fractal. This is first, as far as I'm aware of dynamic, interactive, provable on-chain generative art. So this implementation is an example where you could make on-chain generative art which are not static, which can evolve over time in a dynamic fashion. And you can decide what step of the process you want to display. So you can imagine this fractal system, but you can also imagine something like Game of Life. And so we are, as I say, if you are interested in this kind of things, there is so many things to build that just come to us. Just try it out. Just figure it out. And now the last kind of thing I want to just expose is a new sort of tooling that comes up. So we have seen, first of all, this combination of cheap data and cheap computation enables, for the first time, practical smart contract wallet. So in Starknet, we don't have EOAs. We don't have private keys, per se. Everything is a contract. And so you can finally have social recovery. You can have capping of amount of money being transferred, efficient multi-sig, and so on and so forth. And this is what DYDX has been building. That's why we partner with them to help us sort of build the infrastructure of wallet on Starknet. We have seen also discussing with Snapshot. So Snapshot is by far the largest DAO tooling in the world right now. And we are working with them on Snapshot X, which enables any project to remove their multi-sig. How so? Because you can finally vote on layer one for cheap by offloading the voting, the verification of the vote to L2. So the way it works, for those that are familiar, very fancy, something called storage proof, it's very cool, and there is so many usage of this that has not been explored yet. A bunch of others. Zoro is building a proof of personhood. We see anonymous voting, and I'm expecting to see more and more advanced cryptography tooling like, snarks on top of SnarkNet. SegP, or L1, like the Ethereum signature, we are seeing like the possibility to sign with your iPhone, with the secure enclave of your iPhone. Things that are not feasible today on any other blockchain. And so, I'm about to conclude here, which is, this is just a set of topics that I explored. There are other people coming to us to do provable inference machine learning to many other use cases. We have seen people looking into L1, L2 communication. How can I, for instance, mint on L1, trade on L2 for NFTs? Or how can use L3s to offload some of the computation of some places? And so, to conclude, with this, the limit is your imagination. If you want to build what you couldn't build before, try it out. Try Cairo, try Starknet, come to us, give us feedback, and we'll try to work with you, work with the community that we have been seeing so far, and we're getting extremely interesting traction, extremely strong people coming in. So if you want to know more, happy to come, please talk to me, talk to our team, Starkware team here, and yeah, come in there. So if you want, last thing, if you want to join the Discord, this is the QR code for the Discord. This is where all the community happened, and you're more than welcome to discuss it.